The U.S. space mission culminated in the Apollo 11 mission, which saw Neil Armstrong walk on the Moon. It's July 20, 1969. Astronaut Jim Lovell is hosting a party at his home to celebrate the Apollo 11 moon landing. Jim works with astronaut Jack Swigert, who also has a smart mouth. Lovell will travel on Apollo 14 with astronauts Ken Mattingly and Fred Hayes. Once U.S. citizens realize they have beaten Russia to the moon, the space program faces budget restrictions. But then the primary Apollo 13 crew is sidelined when Alan Shepard develops an ear infection. Jim and his crew are moved up 6 months and will fly Apollo 13. Lovell, Hayes, and Mattingly spend time in the simulator 3 months before to launch, practicing docking with the Lunar Excursion Module (GEL-EM). In order to test Mattingly's reaction in the event of a real flight, the technicians unexpectedly switched off a few of the thrusters. Mattingly is caught off guard for a moment, but he manages to perform the procedure successfully. Marilyn, Jim's wife, is wary about the unlucky number 13, but Jim ignores her. He is overly determined to walk on the moon. It's a childhood dream. 2 days before the launch, Lovell is approached by Deke Slayton and the flight surgeon, who inform him that backup crew member Charlie Duke has been diagnosed with measles, exposing all of the astronauts. Lovell says he has the measles. Slayton replies, Ken Mattingly hasn't. The flight surgeon forecasts that Mattingly will become unwell during the flight, and Jim must decide whether to go without Mattingly, with Swigert, or not at all. Jim resolves to shoot for the moon. Mattingly becomes upset when he learns the truth. He is confident that he will not become sick. Swigert enters flight sims and fails to complete the re-entry correctly. The crew synchronization has completely broken. Swigert is particularly concerned about the launch on April 11th. At flight control in Houston, lead flight director Gene Kranz is also getting ready for the flight. As the white team's leader, he is required by NASA to wear a white vest with the mission logo. As the astronauts are secured into the command module Odyssey, Kranz conducts pre-flight tests and launch readiness. The crowd applauds as Apollo 13 takes off on time at 1:13. Mid-flight, Engine 5 develops a snag, and Jim considers aborting, but Mission Control gives the go-ahead to proceed. Jim believes there has been a snag in the mission. Swigert then executes a complex maneuver to dock the service module with the lunar module, which he does flawlessly. Capcom assigns Swigert some housekeeping procedures after a typical mid-flight transmission, including churning the oxygen tanks. Swigert accomplishes this. There is an explosion in an oxygen tank. The spacecraft was forcefully shook. Several alarms sound off. Lovell asks what he did. He claims he simply stirred the tanks. Mission Control, ECOM, and Guidance are taken aback when their computer screens flicker. Capcom exchanges a puzzled glance with Kranz and asks, "This is Houston, say it again, please?" Lovell says, "Houston, we have a problem." The explosion has caused the oxygen tanks to suddenly empty. Tank 2 is gone and Tank 1 supply is falling rapidly. It's a quadruple failure with fuel cells 1 and 3 failing as well. Jim looks out the window and can see oxygen spewing out of the tanks. In Mission Control, Kranz is stunned and calls each team to call in their support crews. He knows it will be a tough task to bring the crew home with no oxygen. At this point, Kranz receives recommendations to shut down the errant fuel cells to isolate the fuel leakage. Cells shut down cannot be revived and module can't land with one fuel cell. This effectively means no moon landing on this mission. The leak is in the command module, so Jim activates the lunar module. CM is down to 15 minutes of O2. The CM will be powered off, and if the flight guidance data is not sent to the LM before the power down, Apollo 13 will effectively be flying blind and will be lost. Working quickly, LM is powered up and guidance data is sent on schedule. The LM was not designed to fly with the CM on its back. Kranz has a staff meeting to decide how to get the module home. The CM engine is considered out of service. CM will only be used for re-entry, however it is unclear whether the shield is still intact. The LM engine will propel the craft around the moon and return home. The only problem is that O2 runs out at the halfway point. Mattingly learns of the Apollo 13 catastrophe and rushes to Mission Control to assist. His task is to figure out how to power up the CM with 8 amps of power. Kranz collaborates with the rest of the team to create an air filter using only materials found on Apollo 13. Meanwhile, LM has limited power, therefore everything has been turned off, including the radars, cabin warmth, instrument panels, navigation computer, and the whole smash. Swigert believes the CM is approaching Earth too fast and will skip straight off. He believes Mission Control isn't telling them this. Jim agrees, but adds it's a problem in the future. In the face of death, the astronauts have a furious fight, with Hayes blaming Swigert for their problems. Meanwhile, CO2 levels inside the modules are growing. The engineers at Mission Control complete the filter and communicate the orders to Jim. The astronauts build the filter, and the CO2 levels quickly begin to decrease. At least they are not going to die from a lack of air. Mattingly is still in the simulator, attempting to figure out the power-up procedure. He used too much electricity and had to start over. Hayes gets unwell in the CM and has a 104 fever. The CM is quite cold. Kranz learns that the spacecraft's trajectory is too shallow and a course correction is required, but CM cannot be powered up yet. So this is a blind burn. Jim realizes they can use the Earth as a reference point to manually steer the engines. Mattingly discusses the sequence he intends to utilize for re-entry. Aaron claims they don't have enough power and must sell off some of the systems. Mattingly claims they require all of the systems he's listed. They debate about it, and Mattingly claims he will get greater influence. Jim requests Mission Control to forward the procedure to them since they can't throw things together at the last minute. He says, "We're all very exhausted up here. The world is getting awfully big through the window." Mattingly believes that since the LEM gets backup power from the CM, they should reverse the flow to provide additional power to the CM. There is no process for this, but Young and Aaron decide to try. Mattingly and Aaron prepare the plan and race to the flight deck to inform Jim. Swigert notices moisture on the instrument panels and is concerned that they will short out. He clarifies, it's like trying to drive a toaster through a car wash. Swigert successfully turns on the CM. He says, "Ken, we got her back up. I wish you were here to witness it." Mattingly replies, "I'll bet you do." Hayes comments, "Way to go, Jack." Swigert gives a smile. The team detaches the service module, revealing the extent of the explosion's destruction. "One whole side of the spacecraft is missing," shouts Lovell. He claims that a panel is blasted out straight up to the heat shield. According to a television news anchor, temperatures can reach 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit during a lunar re-entry mission. If the heat shield is even slightly cracked, the intense cold might have ripped it wide open. Worse, if the pyrotechnics that control the parachutes are broken, the chutes may not open at all, enabling the spaceship to crash into the water at a suicidal 300 miles per hour, rather than a gentle 20. The team progresses from the LM to the CM. They throw the LEM away, and Lovell watches after it. Hayes swallows deeply and says, "She sure was a good ship." Mattingly concludes, "Farewell, Aquarius, and thank you." The crew of the aircraft carrier USS Iwo Jima is depicted preparing for recovery operations. The mission control room is overcrowded with personnel awaiting re-entry. Retro informs Kranz that the trajectory is still slightly shallow and inquires if they should notify the crew. Kranz inquires whether there is anything they can do about it. Retro responds, "Not now." "Then they don't need to know, do they?" Kranz asks. "It's about time for the entry interface." Lovell continues, "Gentlemen, it's been a privilege flying with you." A blazing cloud surrounds the CM as it speeds towards Earth. Mattingly keeps trying to communicate with the crew. INCO claims it's been 3.5 minutes, then 4. Everyone else remains quiet and solemn. Then they notice the CM on the television. The parachutes deployed successfully. The next moment, they hear Lovell reply, "Hello, Houston. This is Odyssey. It's nice to see you again." There is thunderous applause at Mission Control. After splashdown, Lovell shakes hands with Hayes and Swigert. Before a Navy diver arrives to extract them from the CM, he adds, "Houston, we've reached Stable 1, and the ship is secure. This is Apollo 13, signing off." Kranz says, "Good job," in a strangled voice and gives a thumbs up with both hands. Others in the room continue to applaud. In the following months, it was discovered that a defective coil constructed within the oxygen tank sparked during our cryo stir, causing the explosion that wrecked the Odyssey. It was a small problem that occurred 2 years before.